everyone. If you're looking to develop multifamily buildings on land, then this is the episode for you. Come get all your questions answered and be ready to get your developments done. Get all the information you need. My name is Diana Lizarazo. I am your host, and today's guest speaker is Ali Nazarian. Now, before we get started, I want to share some exciting news with you. I have a social networking platform for the real estate investing industry. If you are an investor, you are a mentor, or you're a professional, so you're those that service investors, you want to be a part of this platform. You want to be a part of a supportive community where you can work together, collaborate, and be a part of amazing teams that are thriving. Now back to the show. On the flip side, we're here to answer any questions you have. And today's topic, like I said, it's all about different strategies and developments in specifically multifamily developments. This is for Canadians too. So we're going to have lots of fun. If you guys are ready to bring on Ali, let's send him some thumbs up, some hearts, some fire, and let's get him on the stage. Usually it takes like 20 tries. Always fun. Although actually it's not too bad these days. I feel like it's a bit better. Let me see. I think, Ali, you might have to send me a request. I sent you one. I don't know if you saw it though. I don't know if it's weird if we have to like send requests together. Oh, there we go. Let's see which way. One of us will get connected. There we go.
Oh, hi, it worked.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's always great to have you. You always have such great knowledge. But before we get started, for those that don't know you, let's just start with a little bit of background. What kind of investor are you? What's your real estate strategy? How long have you been in it? Whatever you'd love to share.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Ali. I'm an engineer by trade, and I do multifamily development and investing, and also like multifamily development management and consulting for those who need help with their development projects. And so my focus has been on this for a few years now. I started doing developments in 2017, like when I bought a piece of land and I started building a duplex back in Alberta and moving to Ontario. And then in the past couple of years, I would say in the past 3-4 years, I've been focusing on multifamily, kind of bringing the best of both worlds from land development and multifamily to develop multifamily. So we have projects kind of in Ontario, London, Oshawa, then Niagara, and then some in New Brunswick as well. We have a project that's about 50-60 units in St. John, New Brunswick. And I have some in Alberta as well. So a little bit spread around, but yeah, and my passion is in like sustainability and energy efficiency, and like really using technology to basically build more efficient homes. And that also helps us, secure better financing for those who are familiar with CMHC and whatnot, which maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially with multifamily. So we'll definitely be touching on that. So let's start with, like that, we're going to be talking about multifamilies, developing them on land. So let's just start with what are the different types of developments and why do you like land development projects the best?
Yeah, so thing is, land is something they're not making more of it. So if you think about it from a scarcity perspective, land just through time always becomes more valuable. And it's not about, who is elected president and then Bitcoin jumps up. If another president comes, it goes down. It's not a stock that goes up and down. We have a limited amount of useful land, and usually based on proximity to centers and whatnot. So adding value to the land, and that's my definition of land development, is like you're making some changes, you're making improvements to the land to increase the value. That's what we call land development. Um, because land is so scarce and they don't make more of it, so if you can, add more units on the same land, it becomes more valuable. And the value of land is always directly correlated to how many units you can build on it. If you can build a single family home, there's a certain price for it. But now if you're allowed to build 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, now the value is higher because, obviously it increases the profit margins for people and more people can live there. So that's what I like about land. It's also because you end up with a newer product. So there are strategies in land development, and you're basically flipping the paper. Like you do the rezoning or severance and you sell it. Those work depending on the market as well. But my focus is on actually developing a multifamily property on that land, or it could be like a conversion of addition that considered a form of development as well. And then the reason being, like, you end up with a brand new product. You usually get better tenants for it. And if it's done right in a multifamily space, you can create a lot of value by value engineering your design and your project, additional income and whatnot. I don't want to get into like the detail of like how multifamily properties are valued, but it's directly related to the income when you're talking about 5+ units. So I love the creativity space. Like you can be really creative in these spaces. It's a blank canvas, so I really get a kick out of that, of like designing a new project and bringing like new technology to achieve the energy efficiency and whatnot, and then using the CMHC. And the other reason is there's a lot of support right now, like from probably first time in the history, all layers of government. They're trying to help. If they're actually helping or not helping, that's a different conversation. But they're on paper, they're saying they're trying to help. So, and then there's like CMHC programs. You can get up to 95% of your construction cost if you meet the criteria. So I think it's a unique, probably historic moment in Canada that there are great opportunities to develop multifamily, especially rentals. There's not as much support if you're building to sell, but if you're building to rent, there's a lot of support for it.
Oh, that's great to hear. I think that'll be great to tap into. But let's first talk about, just because in case we have new investors on, developments can sound very, very scary, especially when you're dealing with multi units because they're much bigger,
Yeah.
much more costly. So if you're talking to a beginner, what would you recommend them so that they can pass those fears
Mhm.
and be confident to do a development? Like, what are the tips that you would give them?
For sure. Yeah. It's don't rush it, right? Don't get the FOMO that, oh, I gotta have a project by next month and like just jumping in. And but I have to admit, like years ago I've done that, right? Like you're like, oh, I just want to get going. And now I do coaching as well, so I have students that they're like, oh my god, I'm like, I want to get it started, I'm excited, blah blah. I'm like, you got to be careful with that because you might ignore some, like red flags or yellow flags that could cause some risk in the future. So tip number one is don't rush it, right? Second one is get as much education as possible. Attend meetings, talk to people who know the topic. If you're talking about development, about that. There are lots of coaching programs out there. The next one is like building a strong team, consultants, and also being careful of like who you're getting advice from, right? Your realtor, with no disrespect to my realtor friends, your realtor may not be the best source of advice if you're trying to do development unless they have done developments themselves. Your mortgage broker may not be the best advisor, right? You need to work with some, even your builder sometimes may not be, because the builder may not understand how the numbers work. They might be the best at building the building that you propose to them. But as a developer, it's your job to determine what works and what doesn't work financially, like the business case for that development. So make sure you talk to like the right consultants and you have the right team with you. Um, and yeah, like, and the other one, it's huge. And sometimes I know we break those rules as well. It's make sure you always have three exit strategies. Um, Development is inherently risky. You're exposed to market fluctuations. There's a lot of steps that you're taking that, and there's a lot of like, it's dependent on a lot of other people, like city approvals and things like that. Delays are the most common risk in development. So to mitigate those risks, you need to make sure there's other exit options, right? For example, if you're thinking about development, make sure the property that you buy can carry itself. And so then if you can't, it is still, it still makes sense without the development.
Mhm. I love that. That's actually a great point. Actually, you made a lot of great points. Because I
Thank you.
can also say, because I know I'm going to start with one where it's a lot of people, not even in the development, but also in the renovation sense. Same thing, builders, renovation companies. For example, people partner up with them thinking that they know how to run the numbers,
Yeah,
that they get everything. And it is like they just know how to build it and they'll know the cost for building it. But like you said, do they know the zoning if it's involved? How much is that going to cost? Do they know what the variance or permits cost? Do they know like the durations of those periods even
yeah,
before you get to development? So
exactly.
like you said, that's I think a big problem that I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
people think that, oh, you have the trade, so it's amazing and they know everything. No, no, no. They know
yeah,
their trade.
yeah,
That's what
exactly,
they're expert in, and understanding that there's more involved
exactly.
than just the trade. Because I've seen lots of people fall thinking that my trade, they know everything. They know everything
Yeah,
about what they know. And like
exactly.
even you're saying, for example, there could be developers that are good at single family homes or townhouses, but that's probably different to multi-family building. So even knowing like that, making sure you're grabbing the right kind of person
Exactly,
for the area that you're like the kind of development or where you're investing,
exactly.
all of these things come into play. So I love that
Yeah,
you said that because even on just
yeah,
regular real estate side stuff, you see the same problems happening in
exactly.
that sense.
And the underwriting, actually, just to add to that list, that's the biggest thing. Like your builder doesn't know how to underwrite a multifamily deal, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily. Maybe they do, but in most cases they don't. They just know what to build. But you as a developer are deciding if you're putting 1,000 square foot unit or 800 square foot unit. That is your job as a developer. I always say, like, to my students or like clients for consulting, is like, you as a developer, you have two main jobs: is deciding your unit mix and unit size. That's really what
Mhm.
comes down to this. It sounds very simple, but it's very fundamental. These two questions: what is your unit size and what's your unit mix, like how many one bedrooms, how many two bedrooms, and whatnot, could make or break your deal.
Mhm.
And large development companies, they spend a lot of time and money and resources on market research, like surveying people and whatnot, to get that combination right, because that's the secret sauce to successful development, is having the right
Mhm.
unit mix and unit size. If you build 1,000 square foot unit where you could have gotten away with 700 and you're getting the same rent for that, or maybe slightly higher, your numbers are not going to work. But your builder wouldn't know that. Your architect wouldn't know that. Your architect will ask you like how big you want the unit to be, right? Or sometimes people fall in the trap like, oh, my land allows me to build 1,500 square foot units. That's what I'm going to build the maximum I can. No, just
Mhm.
because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So
Mhm.
making sure that you're talking to the right people who have the experience of navigating those waters, I would say. Because
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this in here. This is kind of my line: is a lot of other strategies like flipping, buying multifamily, like renovating and things like that. It's like driving on a highway. Once you get to the right highway, You're just stay in your lane, don't crash to other cars or blah blah, stay focused and you keep going. Or some other ones are like even more simpler. It's like conducting a train on a track. As long as your engine is running, you just keep going. But development is sailing in the open seas. And you wouldn't just jump on a boat and go to the sea in the open ocean, not having the experience. So you need an experienced captain, or you need to really learn how to be a good sailor, because you could have storms and you can't go back to the shore right away, right?
Yeah,
You can't.
you're gonna ride. Once you're in that storm, you're riding it out. And make
Exactly.
sure you have that mental capacity because it gets pretty rough out there sometimes.
Exactly. It's not to scare anyone off, but just knowing the risks, right? It's not
Mhm.
like, oh, I can just pull over and rest for a little bit. No, like development, once you're in it, it has to keep going. So it's important to have the right team around you. It's like again, it's like you're in the open ocean. You got to make sure your crew on that boat, they know what they're doing, and they have the experience of like dealing with the storms and things that comes, and they can get through it.
Mhm. And one thing actually that I have to say at the same time that I do love about developments is that because you're dealing with a lot of money, you're dealing with bigger projects, if you pick that right team, and I'm going to do the example of, let's say, the mortgage broker who's finding you the financing, if there's anything there that doesn't make sense, they'll let you know. So
Yeah.
that's another something I actually learned going for experienced lenders because if they're rejecting you, you find out why. And for example, there's a lot of experienced lenders that they can tell, for example, beginners, and they can tell like this is a beginner person, they don't have an idea what they're doing, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, don't take it as a negative. You take it as like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the biggest things I saw also happening in the times that things were good, and these people that like lost, especially like the land developments, which is bigger projects, was if you're going to lenders that don't know anything about it, they just have lots of money and they're
Yeah.
excited. Yes, they'll lend to you, not understanding really what it is. And then you're going to go bankrupt because
Yeah.
they didn't check. Do you have those 3, 4, 5 exit strategies that make sense? Do you have the right amount of funding? Do you have the appropriate team in
Yeah.
place to be able to make sure this runs through? So I feel like using that mortgage broker, to be honest, is actually, I feel like that last final step of your vetting process, right? Making
Yeah.
sure like, oh, I don't have this in place. Oh, I don't have the right experience for my builders. I need to find someone else because
Exactly.
clearly they don't
Yeah.
like them
Yeah.
and there must be a reason for it. So I need to pivot and change. So I feel like that last ending is where, and I mean, hopefully you're keeping them in the loop along the way. So it's not
Right.
like you're done and then all of a sudden you're,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
what are your thoughts?
No, that's a really, really great point. Actually, that even on my first project, like when I was getting construction financing, it was frustrating because obviously, again, I didn't know much. I think it was like the first project in 2017. But going through the pain of dealing with the lender and everything that they were asking for, like budgets and things and stuff like that, it was actually a good checkpoint. And I was
Mhm.
like, good thing I'm not doing this like all in cash because then there was nobody you know, to check. There was no like basically a gate to get through. So yeah, you actually that's a really great point. Is like your lenders or your brokers, they're almost like a gatekeeper. So if they're not letting you through the gate, like you want to go back and like double check your underwriting and whatnot. And again, like coming back to the underwriting, it's very very important. Underwriting is like your treasure map, right? Like it tells you like
100%.
where you're getting, like what is that you're gonna get at the end. And yeah, if you're working with an experienced lender or mortgage broker that has worked on files like that, they can tell you also from what other people are doing. So because they see it day in and out, like as a developer, you might do like 1, 2, 3 projects a year, but they're dealing with like 2, 3 of those every day. So
Mhm.
they can be a really good resource if you go to the right person. So that was a really
Mhm.
good point as well that you brought up.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that. It's those are really great points. And even going back to um it also, like, all these things will help in reducing the fears. I think at the same time also, what are your thoughts on, so a new investors coming in and they're going through all these different, checkpoints points that you did. Um, what are your thoughts on like that? Like the fear will come, the problems will happen because they will. It's your first time. And
Yeah.
I feel like as a first time in anything, I feel like you stress way more. I'm sure like you stress probably like crazy on your very first one, and now probably like stresses are different, but like those ones of the past probably barely even shiver, make you
Yeah.
shake anything. You know?
Just telling
What are
you,
your
that's where you get the confidence to do like more complicated, bigger projects.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. Like there are always challenges, right? I was gonna say not just on your first project development, there are challenges in there. I'll mention a quote from my good friend Karina Guzman. Shout out to her. She mentioned in somewhere it's like land development is not for the faint of heart. It's
Mhm.
you gotta have a thick skin. It's not the first strategy that you jump in to do if you're new to real estate investing. But yeah, like it's the challenges are always there. But as you do more projects, you get more experience. Obviously, you can handle more complexity. Which brings me to like something that I always mention is like you can do land development or development as a value added strategy and tag it along to other strategies. Back to that,
Mhm.
like having different exit options, right? If, for example, you're doing a duplex conversion and that makes sense on its own, and then on top of that, you have a potential to sever the land and add another duplex on that land, then that's a value-added strategy that you're using. But if that doesn't go through, your duplex conversion should still make sense. Or if it's a single family, or if you're looking to buy a personal home to live in, and you just pick the one that has like an extra piece of land, but it still is the house that you would live in anyways. And then that extra piece of land that you could do something with it later. It eliminates the stress of delays and whatnot because land development always has delays. Because now you're not just relying on that exit strategy, right? Like, or someone say like you don't have the gun to your head. Um, or you can even do this on a larger scale. Like you can get a multifamily, do your multifamily bear strategy and all that stuff, and then do land development on top of that as a value added strategy. So then, especially for like the first few projects, this might help, take some of the stress away.
That's a very, very good point that you say that actually, because if you do make land development your very first project, like the amount of learning
Yeah,
is just insane because not only are you learning how to develop or do the zoning and all the development stuff, but the management of the building, understanding, for example, even how to find the right tenants, finding the
exactly.
right, like if you don't even have the experience of understanding the problems of finding tenants, you may not even know how to hire the right company to
Yeah,
do that property management because even that in itself, like you go through quite the, you know, like finding a good property manager in itself is, and at least if you've had some experience of like, let's say
exactly.
working with tenants and knowing the problems that happen, will make you even just target, okay, how do I find the right property manager? So that's a great point. It's
Yeah,
also maybe doing a couple other steps beforehand as projects before getting into a development. Unless like you said, unless if you're more like the learner on the team and you have these experienced people
yeah,
that can they're taking you on for the ride, then go ahead, make it your first
yeah,
one. Because generally, even like that, I think you're really only dealing at one small part of it because they have their
yeah,
team and you're more watching. So you may not get the full view of everything,
yeah.
but at least you're getting some level of view that will get you started, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, two things I'm going to mention here. Like to your point, that's actually we see that a lot. Like people get excited about development. I know it's the buzzword these days, and like, yeah, I want to develop like a multifamily, like sixplex, eightplex, and whatnot. And like, do you know how to run numbers on a multifamily? How to manage? Do you understand multifamily? And they're like, no. But I'm like, so it's like you want to build a car and design and build a car, but you don't know to actually how to drive a car.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe as a
Mm-hmm.
first step, learn how to drive a car, drive a few cars before you get into like actually designing and building a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. when you do a multifamily development, and we're talking about rentals, like with the assumption that you're going to keep it, um, the first 2 years, like let's take a smaller project, like a sixplex or something. Okay, you have 1 year for planning, permitting, and all that, 1 year to build it, and then you get tenants in there. Once it's built, like that's 2 years. But if you're going to keep it for 20 years, you got to think about the rest of the 18 years. Like to your point, if you don't know how to like put tenants in there, you built it now, you put the wrong tenants in there, and if you're in Ontario, you're done. Your ship is sinking, right? And it's gonna take
Yeah,
a long time
in
to,
so many different ways.
yeah, exactly. Or if you don't know like how to maintain the property and how to manage the multifamily property. So I would say as a first step, learn how to like manage a multifamily, like maybe buy an existing multifamily property and like, get that experience under your belt before you jump into actually building or developing multifamily. Um,
Mhm.
to your
Mhm.
other point, like about like having the right people and like being a smaller part of things to learn. So there are multiple ways people can do that. It's partnering with a developer, like as a passive investor, and like learning that way. Another way they can do that is like, I guess on a smaller scale, it's not as popular, is hiring a development manager. And a development manager will basically take you through the whole process, like from the market research, from market analysis, underwriting, optimizing the pro forma and the value engineering, and they can help you basically hire the right architects, hire the right builders. They can even help you like with the leasing and marketing strategies and like hiring the right property manager. So you can always basically hire someone to help you with that process if you don't have the experience, but you still want to learn how to do it. So there are multiple ways to do it, but yeah, jumping in as your first project, it will be a very risky move.
Mhm. Especially if you're using other people's money, like you want to make sure you're responsible so that this isn't your first and only project
Yeah,
because you pissed everyone
yeah,
off.
yeah, exactly. Like this, hiring a development manager, it's very common on like very large scale projects. Like you wouldn't believe it, but like a lot of the big companies, pension funds and stuff, they're not developers. They don't know how to develop. So they typically hire development management companies to do their developments for them for the first period and whatnot. They might be very good at managing the property, but they don't know how to develop it.
Mhm.
So they outsource that. Less common on the smaller scale, but it is available, and it could be a really good strategy to mitigate that risk. Because what you're going to pay a development manager, you're probably going to lose more than that if you try that, like, on your first project.
Mhm. Yeah, great point. And so actually like that, if someone is looking for a development manager, and again, because you're not coming maybe with so much knowledge in it, what kind of checkpoints would you or kind of questions would you ask the development manager for you to be able to make sure
Mhm.
that they are the right person for
Yeah.
you?
Always like, looking at their experience of like if they've done similar projects, similar scale. And so basically checking their, what do you call it,
Credentials,
resume.
experience.
Yeah. And just like hiring any other professionals, like, just talking to people who have worked with them before, and, just their reputation and their knowledge level. And feeling comfortable with them as well, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you're picking an architect and their style is not your style, you're probably not gonna get along very well. So I would say like obviously the experience and knowledge is number one, but also making sure that you can communicate effectively with each other, and then I guess integrity is very important as well. And again, that comes from like just talking to people, checking references, and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. Or even just asking those questions, whatever research you've done online of it, I feel at least that's what
Yeah.
I do. I feel that I'll do a certain amount of research and then I'll ask questions like as if I don't know that stuff,
Mhm.
just to understand and see their response. Because you can see, for me, I feel like by to say playing dumb, you can see, for example, do they
Yeah,
understand? Or you said, do they actually understand that strategy of development? Do they really know what they're talking about, or are they bullshitting? You know, because you can smell bullshit like through that too, right? Because if they start making up things,
yeah,
then you're just like, okay, they clearly either don't understand that area of
yeah,
development, or maybe just they don't have the experience they say that they have. So I feel like like doing that research is very important because it
yeah,
helps you even just ask that, and even it shows to me. One thing that I love about it is also if they don't get frustrated with you asking questions. I personally like
yeah,
that because then you know that they have patience. You know that they're willing to work with you. You know, I feel like those kind of things bring like they tell a lot because as especially as a beginner, they're gonna have to tolerate a lot of questions from you because to be honest, you're gonna be in like you don't know as much. So you're gonna wanna
yeah,
understand, especially if this is gonna become a profession for you, you're gonna be trying to understand every phase of the process. So
exactly. Yeah,
I feel like as a newbie, especially being able to ask a lot of questions so you find someone that's willing to accept, being asked a lot. Because there's lots of people that, to be honest, are like, let me do my work. I know what I'm
yeah,
doing. And I don't want to like answer all these questions. They're not probably for you. There's probably someone you hire once you already have the experience because they may be super amazing in their credentials, but they're not to say coaches because that's
yeah,
basically what you're like hiring is almost a coach, but they'll do the work for you. Like if they do it for yourself, but you obviously want to learn it. So you want someone
right.
that has that ability to be that wants to kind of is willing to coach you through it, do the work, but also
Yeah,
explain what they're doing.
yeah,
What are your thoughts?
100%. No, that's 100%. I think that's a probably a strategy I've used before as well. Just play it dumb, ask a question that you know the answer, and then just see if they have the same answer as you, or if you're on the same page with those things. And yeah, basically like a little test whoever you're talking to, and that applies to any like professional that you're hiring or anyone that you're working with. That's a pro tip right there. So yeah, I think
That's
that's a
something
really
I
good
learned
one.
actually, even for hiring. I think also
Yeah,
women have it a bit easier in that sense because generally in real estate, people don't expect women to know very much. So I feel like I take advantage of it to be honest as a woman because I was just like, can you even deal with me
yeah,
with my questions? You know, I'm like, because if you're gonna get upset and get all frazzled and just be like, let me do my work, I was like,
yeah,
there's probably someone that I don't want to have on my team because communication is so important. So the guy who would do that, it was really funny for my husband. We'd be having to hire people on the team, and I would be the first quick vetting of them to see like how
yeah,
because to me, the reason why we would do it in that case is because I wanted to see how they dealt with clients. You know, if
mm,
if clients don't know as much as, if for example my husband comes, then obviously he's gonna come with like all the technicals, like I know this is how I do everything. But if you're coming to someone that you think that doesn't know anything, that conversation is very different. And knowing, in our case, it was like knowing, how are you going to speak to clients? And generally,
yeah.
people would think I don't know anything. So it kind of worked for my advantage.
Nice. Yeah. No, that's a really good tip. Yeah, it's kind of like being strategic in those conversations with people and hiring people and whatnot. Because yeah, like, and then the communication, it's huge, right? Like you can be the best person in the world, but if you can't communicate with them and your styles are clashing, like at the end of the day, the job is probably not going to get done, or not get done as effectively as it could have been. So, well, that's a really good point. Yeah, for sure. So also the other thing is like, I know again, like with development, it's like you got to think about like you want to be a developer, you're interested in owning those properties, right? So that's a difference as well, because sometimes if you just want to own like multifamily property that's new and whatnot, and you want to like benefit from that basically lift in value by doing the development, you gotta think about like what is your intention? Do you want to be a developer, or do you want to be like owning multifamily properties? Because that would also change the strategy that you want to take, right? Again, versus hiring out the development piece and just focusing on like, the tenant placement and managing the property, which you're going to be doing longer term, or if you want to be a developer, so you want to focus more on learning how to be a developer. So I think that getting that clarity is important. It's interesting, like through my coaching, or even like working with clients, it's like sometimes they're not clear about that. I think having that clarity of like, what is your intention here? What's the end goal? Or like with that 7 habits of highly effective people, like rule number one is to start with the end in mind. Like, what is the end goal? Like, what's the ultimate goal of like what you're trying to do? So I think that's important for people to think about as well.
That's a very, very great point. Because, like you said, it's like you may want to be one part of the big team and making sure you're
Yeah.
that part that really you enjoy. So I love that you said that because it's very true. A lot of people think it's one role. There's many roles
Yeah.
in building. So that's actually something that I would say that I like about developments too. It's a very team-oriented sport to say, which it's kind of, I find that it's also nice because you have people to problem solve with, to figure out
Exactly.
solutions. Sometimes if you're on these smaller projects and you yourself on it, you may not have so many sounding boards, or it's nothing, or I mean, you may go outside, but sometimes like having that team can be super
For
effective.
sure, yeah, and that applies to like any business or anything you're doing. Just having the team around you and like the people around you. That's really important for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now let's get on to CMHC. Let's start with just a vague of what it is and just so people understand the
Yeah.
basics of CMHC.
So for those who are not familiar, CMHC is Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They set the rules for basically not to set the rules, but they kind of like they oversee the housing industry, and they provide like loan insurances, and in some cases they provide loans. It's basically the government arm to I don't know, like manipulate or control or like influence the housing market. So the most popular product that in the past couple of years is a program called MLI Select, which, if I remember correctly, MLI stands for Mortgage Loan Insurance. And Select is basically a program that came up with that based on energy efficiency, affordability, and accessibility, you get points. And based on number of points that you get different kind of like benefits in terms of loan insurance. Then in this scenario, CMHC is not the lender. They provide basically a mortgage insurance. It's like when you're a first-time home buyer and you want to put like 5-10% down and you get a CMHC insurance. It's the same thing, but for like commercial multifamily space. And it can allow, like if you get the highest points and whatnot, you can go up to like 95% loan to cost or loan to value, depending on what you're doing, and lower, basically easier requirements. And you can go up to 50-year amortization. That in a multifamily scenario would be huge because that lowers your monthly payments and can help cash the property to cash flow. So kind of in a nutshell, that's what it is. Yeah.
Mhm. And with your experience in the areas you've worked in, what do you say are the differences between them related to MLI Select? Like, what strategies do you use in which areas?
What do you mean, like area, like geographical area, or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Like, 'cause you're Alberta and
yeah,
Ontario, right? Do you do New Brunswick? Do you say New
yeah,
Brunswick
do New
too?
Brunswick
So
as
I'd be
well.
curious
Yeah,
to hear it like that, like between these, like
yeah,
how do you, because they're obviously different, like you said,
yeah.
so you will probably use MLI Select
We do.
differently
Yeah.
in each province.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, each province or even each project could be different. And again, that's the art of being a developer or development manager, is to optimize all of that. Like there's no right or wrong, right? Like it's like you can do it multiple different ways, and that's what I'm saying. It's like sailing in the seas. There are no specific roads. You can go different ways and still get to same destination or a different destination. So, in the context of MLI Select program, because there are three components, there is energy efficiency, which basically you at the top of it, you need to be 40% above building code for new builds or improving the energy efficiency by 40%. It also includes GHG emissions reductions, greenhouse gas emissions. There is the affordability piece, is basically like they define what's affordable rents, and then you need to be at or below that rent for your units to be called affordable, and you're locked in for 10 years. And then there's the accessibility piece that didn't used to be like that useful, but it's since they changed the rules a little bit, lowered the amount of points that you can get from energy efficiency, now accessibility is becoming more important. But that's basically, it's a way of design to make sure it's an accessible unit, and there are different standards for that. In terms of how we use it in different geographical areas or different provinces, it all comes down to the market. You go to the Alberta market, the affordability mark is quite high because the average income is high. If I'm not mistaken, like Edmonton is like 1,600 something for affordable rent, but the market rents for a one bedroom could be at or below that price. So in your project, you can, like, to meet your affordability, you could basically include some one bedrooms, and without sacrificing your income, you're achieving your MLI Select points. Whereas if you come to Ontario, for example, Toronto, I believe the affordability mark is like 1,200 or something. There's no way you can't even rent a bedroom, I think, in Toronto with 1,200. So
Yeah, I was gonna
you will be
non-existent over there.
you will be sacrificing a lot to put an affordable unit, and that your numbers may not work. So we try to use more energy efficiency and affordability, but you may not get to like 50-year amortization or 95% loan to value in that scenario. And again, this all comes back to your underwriting. You need to be underwriting different scenarios. It's like, the make sure you get the right mix of different components.
My dog
No,
decided he needed to come in.
different components that different levers you can pull to make it work. New Brunswick, you could still, like, the affordability mark and the rental market, they're closer than Ontario. My preference is always energy efficiency because I used to do energy efficiency in 2017 before even MLI Select came out. That's just a passion of mine. It's also, you're doing something good for the world. I'm also against like wasting energy anyways. So energy efficiency has been my go-to, but they changed the rules that now you can't get the 100 points to get the 95% and 50 years with just energy efficiency. So we'll have to, like, basically add some affordability or accessibility, which I think in most cases accessibility makes a little bit more sense from a financial perspective because you're not discounting your rent as much. Because at the end of the day, in a multifamily, for those who are familiar or they're not familiar, that's basically your number one. It's how much income that building is producing after expenses and whatnot. That's the only thing that matters really in a multifamily.
I mean, your property needs to be viable so that it can last forever, or else you're
Exactly.
losing that puppy quite quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, I could do a whole 1 hour session on like the politics of like what's behind the scenes, and like some of these things don't make sense. But yeah, at the end of the day, as the developer or the owner of the building, that's basically your job to make sure that your project is financially viable. And again, I can't emphasize that enough, that importance of underwriting when you're doing a development. It's huge, and it's fairly complex, or can be complex, unlike if you have, like, a lot of units and whatnot. And especially making a decision between different options when there is no right or wrong, that's where it becomes an art and not science.
Mm-hmm. And now, last question, what do you see? Because you said that there's been many changes in the government and that they're really trying to help out with development. So what are you seeing? What are these changes that they've been bringing out that has really helped you a lot?
One of them, like biggest one, is development charges. That has been a hot topic. Toronto is notorious for development charges. Like, government talks about affordability, but they have increased the development charges by like 20% every year. So that's a big topic. I know in Toronto there's like talks about that right now. You can do up to 4 units are exempt from development charges. And the fifth unit, you can defer it. With Bill 23 in Ontario, all development charges by default can be paid over 6 years after occupancy. So that kind of eliminates a bit of a capital pressure upfront. You're still paying for it. A lot of cities offer discounts on development charges for rentals, depending on how many, like the unit type, like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, they have discounts on that. Some cities offer reduced or deferred property tax for new build rental buildings. I know Moncton, like basically is like first year you only pay 30%, second year 66%, and then you go to 100. So they give you some time to recoup some of the capital. So there are some of those. There's a really big push for expediting approvals and reducing red tape. That one is a little bit more, I guess, subtle, because every city has different rules. So it's not something that like government can just make it, flip the switch and solve the problem. But they're pushing for that as well. So there are a lot of things happening, definitely. So I
And do
would
you
say like
foresee more coming, more changes coming? Do you
definitely.
foresee that?
Yeah, definitely. Like Toronto's, they just announced actually last week that they're going to propose like 15% property tax reduction for any new rental developments. They're putting a lot of caveats to that you have to make it affordable for 40 years, and like they have a different definition of affordability than CMHC. But at least the conversation is happening. So I would say like most likely it's going to be more reduced property taxes, reduced development charges, maybe deferring even the reduced development charges. Because those are really the big hurdles. Like you can't control the construction costs, right? Like the labor and material. I guess now with Trump in office, like we're probably going to see maybe we could see some increase in like the cost of material, or maybe less because we can't export as much to US, so we might have an oversupply in Canada and lumber and whatnot. So will be interesting to see. But what government is doing is they're just trying to like make it easier, or at least they claim they're trying to make it easier for new builds. But like years ago, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, developer was like a bad word, right? Everybody would hate you, thinking that like, you're just like after money and whatnot. But now they've realized that developers are actually the solution to the housing crisis and the shortage of supply. So I guess it's a good time to do developments or being developers, or doing new builds, right? Like doing new builds. But again, you don't have to do it yourself. You can work with a team that has the experience and can guide you through it. But the ultimate goal, I think, owning multifamily, that's the ultimate goal. I think that's got to make it clear. Like the goal is not the development, goal is the final product, right? Which is family proven to be, the best wealth creation vehicle ever.
100% agree. I love it. Any final comments, anything that you wanted to bring out before we end this call, of maybe a question I missed and you wanted to share? Anything about what's going on in yours that you want to share?
Nothing really to say. It's like, don't be afraid, reach out to people. People can always reach out to me on Instagram or on Facebook. On Instagram is Ecolux Developments. Facebook is just my name, Ali Nazarian. There are lots of communities out there. It's a team sport, and just making sure you surround yourself with the right people, and anything is possible, right? So just make sure you put the right strategy and take the time to build a team. Everything is possible for sure.
Love it. Thanks you so much, Ali. It's always so much fun to chat with you,
Thank you.
to get to hear what you have to say. If you guys love what you heard, he will be tagged on here. He's also on REI FAM, so if you want to learn more about it, you'll see his profile in there. And like he said, feel free to DM him, check out what he's up to, check out his profiles. And if you love what you heard from me, you want to know what I'm up to, Same thing. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. Check out my profile on REI FAM, and we'll definitely see you in the next episode. Ali, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bring a lot of value to the community. So keep up with the good work.
Thank
Thank you.
you. We'll see
Have a good
everyone
day,
in the next
everyone.
episode. Bye, Ali. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.